Thank you for turning to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at an item from Best of Dragon Volume 2, or if you own it originally, Dragon number 39, the Anti-Paladin. A great non-player character class that I used at my table immediately after reading it and have continued to use. In fact, the campaign I finished last year, taking place in Sundi, one of the major opponents was an Anti-Paladin. So today we're going to take a look at the non-player character class, why it needs to remain a non-player character class, and what you can do with it at the table. So today on page 121, I'll look at the Anti-Paladin. Best of Dragon Volume 2. Just a quick touch on these Best of Dragon volumes. They did 4 of them, and they just took better articles from the older issues of Dragon, and they reissued them for $3 each. And I look forward to getting them, actually. I only bought the first 2 because that's all I needed. I had the originals of everything after that. But today we're going to take a look at what's inside. Oh, my nice little playmat we use for Spellfire. Decided to throw those as my background. Okay, the Anti-Paladin. This guy, as I said, hails from issue 39 of Dragon. He's very early in this one. There she is. From July of 1980. By the time this guy was out in issue 39, I had actually already been playing D&D for about 3 months. I knew of Dragon, but I didn't really know what Dragon did for a player, so I really didn't have anything to do with Dragon for another year and a half. But did grab this when it came out. When was this published? This one was published in 81, so November of 81. So I grabbed this right around the time I got into reading Dragon. So this is by George Laking and Tim Mesford. And basically the idea is if your players are getting a little jaded and bored, you throw this guy in and he unbores them. It is truly an anti-paladin. This is the opposite of the paladin player character class. It is an NPC class. I have only ever allowed it as an NPC class. It's not a great idea to let player characters play anti-paladins. For one thing, by rule, an anti-paladin must be chaotic evil. And as we all know, chaotic evil tends to be a little tough to work with in a party. Even in a party of all evils, chaotic evil tends to be the most chaotic of all the evils. So basically, they have a different way to determine the stats for the character to give them higher stats. And this was pretty interesting at a time when we were all throwing 3 die 6 and living with the results. I had a fighter with a 5 dexterity running around at the time this article was published. This was a pretty new way, an innovative way to roll up your character stats. I thought about using it for player characters, but I never really did it. So basically for your strength, you would take a base number of 12, and then you would throw a d6. For your intelligence, a base of 10 plus a d8. A wisdom would be 12 plus a d6. Dexterity would be 6 plus a d12. Constitution would be 10 plus a d8, and then the charisma was special. And the way charisma was done is you threw a 4-sider. 1 equals a charisma of 3, a roll of 2 equals 4, a roll of 3 equals 17, and a roll of 4 equals 18. The authors thought that the anti-paladin should be either very, very grotesque to look at, thus causing fear. You'd make a saving throw when you looked at him, or be devilishly, rakishly handsome, and he could actually charm you by looking at you. So, an interesting idea, one I never included. I like my players to not be affected by something that, I don't know, that can be very powerful very quick. I didn't use that, but I did use the other characteristic generation just to get higher stats. So if I'm throwing a base number of 12 for my strength and throwing a d6 with that, a d6 average is 3.5. So I'm going to end up with something between a 15 and a 16 strength base. That's a pretty good start. So then we start going down to the Anti-Paladin special abilities. Several abilities for his character class, and it's similar to what the Paladin gets. +2 bonus to all saving throws. He's immune to disease, and he's a carrier. He's able to transmit disease, and he can do this once per week on levels 1 through 5, twice a week, levels 6 through 10, etc. So upon attaining every 6 levels, or every 5 levels. And laying on hands. Once a day, the Paladin can cause wounds to others or cure damage to himself, giving or healing 2 wounds of damage per level, and it's by touch. So that's pretty neat too. It's a nice twist on the Paladin lay on hands where you heal 2 points per level. The Anti-Paladin can actually cause damage of 2 points per level. The protection from good, this works just like a reversed protection from evil, and always makes him detect as magical. He has the Thief's backstabbing ability. He gets a +4 bonus to hit and double damage if he hits, whenever he attacks from behind. Since he will only attack from a position of strength, usually behind or with a dagger, backstabbing is the preferred method of attack. I have actually moved that I let the Anti-Paladin's damage go up just as the Thief's would. So if he's 9th level, he's doing triple. 13th level, he's doing quadruple. That kind of thing. Makes it much more lethal. And I let him backstab with his sword. Use of poisons. Poisons were a big thing in early D&D. They still can be, depending on your game. And it goes into a great chunk of information about how the Anti-Paladin deals with poisons, and 2- and 3-part poisons that he could use, and ways he could use it to wreak havoc and cause fear in his community, that kind of thing. And then we have the poisons available by his level. So all the poisons out of the DMG. Issue 32 of the Dragon, that's recounted later in this issue. Those aren't from the DMG, they're from the Dragon. If you use those, then it's pretty nice. In the early days, I did refer to this article a lot if I had to have poison, the old poison needle trap. This article and the article reprinted later in this book saw a lot of use for that. Now we come to equipping the Npc Anti-Paladin. And the authors here recommend against a lot of magic items for the Anti-Paladin, simply because he'd become too overwhelming too quickly. I don't agree with that. I equip him on much the same footage as my player characters, so that he can stay toe-to-toe with them. Not that he's going to want to necessarily fight toe-to-toe, but so he has the ability to if he needs to. So he gets magical items such as daggers of throwing, which absolutely an Anti-Paladin would use, even a bow, any kind of stuff, magical armor. Now we come down to the Unholy Reaver, the antithesis of the Paladin's sword. The Unholy Reaver is a +5 sword, and undoubtedly the Anti-Paladin has obtained this sword by murdering its previous owner, which is a cool little note. The Unholy Reaver has several powers. 50% magic resistance, just like a Holy Avenger, within a 5-foot radius. Anti-Paladin must be holding the sword unsheathed for this to operate. Dispels magic in a 5-foot radius at the level of magic use equal to the experience of the level of the Anti-Paladin. So if the Anti-Paladin is 8th level, it dispels at 8th level. Again, the sword must be in the Anti-Paladin's hand, unsheathed, in order to perform. And inflicts +10 damage points in addition to normal damage, but only when used by an Anti-Paladin against opponents of lawful good alignment. That's pretty cool. Again, it's in every way like the Holy Avenger. It's the opposite. This is the Unholy Reaver. And only in the hands of an Anti-Paladin will these powers and bonuses apply. If wielded by a character of evil alignment, the Unholy Reaver will simply act as a normal +2 sword. A character of any other alignment who's unfortunate enough to acquire one of these will discover that it performs as a -2 cursed sword. So the Unholy Reaver is one of the best things the Anti-Paladin's got going for him. I'm all for it. Why not? And now we get down to retainers, human or otherwise, and there's a great deal of information here on how to roll and how many he can have per level. I ignore a lot of this from early D&D because, frankly, it slows things down for me as a DM creatively. It takes a long time to roll up a lot of this stuff when it's just easier for me to say what fits my game. The interesting thing here is, though, he can have demons, devils, and undead as special retainers. They recommend that they simply be guards in his lair or things like that. But it's pretty cool. I did an Anti-Paladin, not in the game in Sundi that I finished last year, but years ago I did a high-level Anti-Paladin who had a vampire as his major domo. And the vampire had created sub-vampires. So the Anti-Paladin had the vampire working for him and all the vampire's minions. An interesting thing I may have skipped, or I did skip, is that the Anti-Paladin can affect undead in the same way as a paladin, except the undead, of course, are forced into servitude, and that goes as 2 levels lower than his. So at 3rd level, he gets the ability to turn or command undead as a 1st level cleric. Then at 4th level, he gets 2nd level ability, and so on and so on. So it can be very important to him. Load up his place with a bunch of zombies or skeletons, because he doesn't automatically destroy them. Even at high levels, he can command them into service. And then it talks about his pony. My Little Pony Terrorize. Yes, the Anti-Paladin can get a regular warhorse, which can be like the Paladin's warhorse. Or, if you want, and yeah, why not, he can ride a hell horse. Why not? A nightmare. I like the idea of an Anti-Paladin riding a nightmare. That just completes the photo to me, and it's what I usually do, even medium-level Anti-Paladins. Now, the neat thing about the article is they have all the rules in here for running this guy from 1st level up through 20th. I've never run a low-level Anti-Paladin against a group because I kind of thought it would be a little too powerful. I think the lowest level Anti-Paladin I've ever bothered putting out was at about 8th level. So use caution with this guy. He can be a game breaker if you use him as intelligently as he should be used. Just be careful with him. I don't use him until medium or higher levels. He's a great high-level opponent. One other thing I want to touch on is the excellent level titles that an Anti-Paladin gets. Nobody uses level titles. Nobody ever used level titles in our game. I'm not saying that nobody ever used them, but we certainly did not. But I thought it was pretty cool that they bothered to name all the levels here. So the 1st level, we have a caitiff. Then he's a miscreant, a malefactor, a hellraiser, a blackguard, a scoundrel, a dastard, a villain of the deepest dye, a fiend, and then finally Anti-Paladin. That's just cool. I like the idea of somebody walking around as a blackguard. And now we go to some stuff on how you play the Anti-Paladin. And these, again, are role-playing rules. They even give morale for when the Anti-Paladin would stay in the fight or flee, and that you should throw this dice or that dice. I don't use morale dice with my monsters. I never really have been a fan of it. I've tried gaming with it my first few years. I would prefer to let my monsters make their own decisions. I don't like the dice to suddenly decide that the monsters flee. Same with the Anti-Paladin. I never bothered with the rules on it. I certainly read them and absorbed them to give an idea of how he would react when, say, facing a good cleric or a paladin. But I've never used the morale, because here he has a good chance of fleeing if he's facing an actual paladin of equal level, things like that. And then we have scenarios for the Anti-Paladin. The article recommends, and I've used it this way, and it's a good way to do it, that this guy has a keep established somewhere in a place of considerable importance. So in the article, they talk about him having a castle around the only fresh water source in an arid area, perhaps along an important river, or, as I did at one time, an important trading pass. The Anti-Paladin had his keep right there, and anybody who wanted to pass through the pass on their business had to pay his toll. So the Anti-Paladin, definitely somebody to include in your campaign. Best of Dragon number 2 or Dragon 39. I realize these are somewhat hard to come by, but they can be found out there, and I don't know how much Dragon 39 goes for in secondary markets. I imagine it could be rather kind of pretty penny. Best of Dragon Volume 2, I don't think would be all that much money. I didn't really research that before I did this video. So that's all I've got to say today about our good friend, the Anti-Paladin. Use with caution. A little bit goes a long, long way with this guy. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you liked what you heard and saw. If you did, please like and subscribe. Remember the Patreon. I want to keep the channel going, but I'm going to need a little help to keep that happening. So please take a look at the Patreon. If you can help out, that'd be great. And that's all I've got to say today on page 121. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.